I demanded my boyfriend not be a best man at his best friend's wedding because his fiancée exposed my cheating and caused me trouble, but my entitled boyfriend ignored me and hurt my feelings throwaway because people involved know my main account. I'm 26, my boyfriend is 27, and we've been together a little over 2 years. We just found out recently that I'm pregnant. It wasn't exactly planned, but we're both genuinely happy about it and trying to do things right. There's a lot happening all at once. Appointments, figuring out living arrangements, finances, all of it. And I've been feeling more sensitive than usual, which I'll admit up front. My boyfriend has a best friend, same age as him, that he's known basically his entire life. They grew up together, their families are close, the whole thing. That friend is getting married in May to his fiancée, who is 24. My boyfriend was asked to be the best man, which he was really excited about. I could tell it meant a lot to him. Here's where things get messy. I used to be really close with his fiancée. Like, close enough that we'd text all the time, hang out separately from the guys, and share personal stuff. I trusted her more than I usually trust people. That's why what happened last year hit me as hard as it did. At a bonfire last summer, apparently she told a group of people something very personal about me. I wasn't there when it happened. I only found out because someone pulled me aside later and told me what she had said. It wasn't just some harmless detail either. It was about something that happened at a friend's bachelorette party. I'm not proud of how I acted that night. I drank way too much, got out of control, and did things I normally wouldn't. It was messy, embarrassing, and something I worked really hard to move past. My boyfriend didn't even know the full extent of it until it got brought back up because of what she said. I remember sitting in my car afterwards, hands shaking, trying to figure out how something I had buried was suddenly back in the open again. It caused real problems in my relationship. Not breakup level, but enough that I had to have uncomfortable conversations, rebuild trust, and basically relive something I was trying to leave behind. It took time for things to feel normal again. So when I heard that she was the one who told people, it felt like a punch to the gut. I confronted her. I didn't go in screaming or anything, but I was upset. I asked her directly why she would share something like that about me. She looked at me like I was speaking another language, completely blank. She kept saying she didn't know what I was talking about, asking me what she did and how she could fix it, and that just made me angrier. Because to me, it wasn't something you forget doing. It wasn't small, it wasn't harmless gossip. It was something that actually impacted my relationship and how people saw me. I remember thinking, there's no way you don't know what you did. That reaction felt fake, like she was trying to play dumb instead of just owning it. After that, I pulled back completely. No more texting, no hanging out, nothing. I kept things civil when we were in the same place, but that closeness was gone. My boyfriend, on the other hand, stayed close to both of them, which I understood on some level. They've been in his life way longer than I have, but it still bothered me sometimes. Not enough to cause fights, but enough that I kept a bit of distance from anything involving them. Fast forward to now. The wedding is coming up, and with me being pregnant, everything feels more intense. My boyfriend mentioned that since he's the best man, he'll obviously be at the wedding, but he could bring me along too in case anything happens with the pregnancy or if I just don't want to be alone. The second he said it, I felt this immediate knot in my stomach. I pictured myself sitting there, watching her walk down the aisle, smiling like everything is perfect, knowing what she did and how it affected me. I told him straight up that I wasn't going. I said I'm not going to sit there and celebrate someone who betrayed me like that. He didn't argue about me not going. He said he understood why I'd feel uncomfortable, but he also said being the best man is really important to him, and he wants to be there for his friend. And something in me just snapped a bit. I told him that if I'm not going, then he shouldn't be going either, at least not as the best man. I said he should be prioritizing me and our baby right now, especially with everything going on. As soon as I said it, the room went quiet. He didn't yell or anything. He just kind of shut down and said we'd talk about it later. Then he dropped the conversation completely. Since then, it's just been tense. I talked to a few of my friends about it, expecting them to back me up. Some did, but most of them didn't. They basically said that while my feelings about the fiancé are valid, this wedding isn't about me, and my boyfriend being the best man is a big deal. They said I shouldn't try to take that away from him and that I should either go and keep my distance or stay home and let him support his friend. One of them pointed out that the pregnancy doesn't automatically mean he has to miss something like this, especially if everything is going normally by then. Another said that holding on to what happened last year is just going to keep hurting me. I get what they're saying, but at the same time, it's not that simple to just move on. Every time I think about her, I remember how exposed I felt finding out she talked about me like that. It's not just awkward, it feels disrespectful to me to pretend everything's fine. And the idea of him standing up there next to them, giving a speech, being part of their big day, it just doesn't sit right with me. It feels like he's choosing them over me in a situation where I was the one who got hurt. At the same time, I know he's been friends with his best friend forever. I know this isn't some random wedding, and I know asking him to step down as best man is a big ask. I just can't shake the feeling that if I matter as much as he says I do, especially now that we're having a baby, then I should come first in something like this. But now I'm stuck second-guessing myself because of what my friends said, so I guess I'm asking, am I being unreasonable for expecting him to step back from being the best man if I'm not comfortable going? Or am I justified in feeling like he should be prioritizing me and our situation over his role in their wedding? People have different opinions. One said, I actually think everybody sucks a little here. She sucks most if she runs her mouth about your business. Your boyfriend sucks a bit for staying neutral for so long when this clearly blew up your trust, and you suck for tying the baby into it like a weapon. Prioritize me and the baby sounds powerful, but unless there's an actual medical reason you need him there that day, that's not fair. Say the real thing. You feel humiliated, you don't trust her, and watching him celebrate with them makes you feel abandoned. That's the honest wound. Say that, not, you can't go. Another said, look, she didn't force you to get blackout drunk and act out at that party. She didn't sabotage your relationship. She exposed something you created. Was it shitty of her to talk about it? Yeah, but you're acting like she invented it out of thin air. You're asking your boyfriend to sacrifice a lifelong friendship milestone because you don't want to face someone who knows your worst moment. That's not about loyalty, that's about avoidance. And dragging your pregnancy into it to guilt him, that's low. You need to take responsibility for your part instead of trying to burn everything around you to feel better. Another said, you're focusing all your anger on the wrong person because it's easier than sitting with what you did. You keep saying she should have known why you were upset. Why? Because you already knew deep down what you were trying to bury. That whole, I worked so hard to stabilize my relationship line says everything. That doesn't happen from harmless fun, you're embarrassed, and instead of owning that fully, you're projecting it onto her. And now you're escalating it by trying to control your boyfriend's role in his best friend's wedding. That's not standing up for yourself, that's damage control gone sideways. Follow-up. I didn't expect things to spiral this far, but they did, and now I feel like I've lost control of something I thought I could still manage. After my last post, I tried to approach things differently. Not softer exactly, but more calculated. I stopped pushing the don't go at all angle, and instead tried to make it about boundaries. I told him if he had to be there, then I needed certain things from him to feel respected. Checking in with me throughout the day, not engaging with her beyond what's necessary, and not letting anything about my situation become a topic there. He listened, but the way he responded felt distant. Like he was humoring me, not agreeing. A couple days later, something else hit. Out of nowhere, she messaged me. It wasn't apologetic, it wasn't aggressive either, it was calm, almost weirdly neutral. She said she'd heard things were tense and wanted to clear the air before the wedding. Then she said she genuinely didn't remember saying what I accused her of, and that she felt like I was holding something against her that she didn't even understand. Then she added something that I haven't been able to shake. She said, I wasn't the only one talking that night. That line stuck in my head like a splinter. Because the version I heard before was very clear, she said it. But now suddenly, it's not just me. That means either she's deflecting or there were more people involved than I thought. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there staring at it, thinking about that night again. Not the bonfire, the bachelorette. Bits of it came back in flashes. Music too loud. Someone handing me another drink when I shouldn't have taken it. A bathroom mirror with smeared eyeliner. Laughter that didn't feel like mine. I remember waking up the next morning with that hollow, sinking feeling, like I'd stepped outside myself and couldn't undo it. I had convinced myself that only a few people there really knew what happened. Now, I'm not even sure anymore. Instead of calming me down, that message made everything worse. I started thinking about who else could have talked. I even reached out to one of the girls from that night, just casually at first, but it turned awkward fast. She replied like nothing was wrong, like we were just catching up, and that almost made it worse. No acknowledgement, no denial, just normal conversation. It felt fake. At the same time, I found out my boyfriend had already known more than I thought. We were arguing again, and I brought up how this whole thing blindsided him last year because of her. He paused, then said, "It didn't blindside me as much as you think." That's when it came out. He'd heard things before the bonfire. Not details, but enough to know something happened. He said he didn't push it because he wanted me to tell him in my own time. That hit harder than I expected, because now it feels like everyone knew pieces of this except me. Or at least, everyone had their own version floating around. And I've been here this whole time, trying to control the narrative by blaming one person. After that, things got worse between us. I told him I felt like he'd been keeping things from me. He said he was trying not to make things worse. I said it did make things worse. He said I was rewriting the situation to avoid dealing with my own part in it. That turned into a full argument. I ended up messaging his best friend, the groom. I know people are going to say that was crossing a line, but at that point I felt like no one was actually hearing me. I told him directly that I didn't feel comfortable with his fiancée, that she had betrayed my trust, and that I didn't support the idea of celebrating her like nothing happened. He didn't respond right away. When he did, it wasn't what I expected. He basically said he wasn't getting involved in secondhand conflict and that whatever happened between me and her needed to stay between us. He also said my boyfriend being his best man wasn't up for discussion. That stung. A lot. Not long after that, my boyfriend found out I had messaged him. I didn't even try to hide it. That was the first time I've seen him actually get angry about this. Not a raised voice, but controlled and sharp. He asked me why I thought it was appropriate to involve him. I told him because no one else was taking this seriously. He said I was escalating something that didn't need to go that far. Then he said something that shifted everything. He told me he is going to the wedding as best man, no matter what I think about it. He said we're not making any more decisions about this until after the wedding, because right now everything I'm doing is making it worse, not better. I tried to argue, but he cut it off. He said, "I'm not abandoning you, but I'm also not abandoning him. We'll deal with everything else after." That was it. Since then, he's been present but not emotionally available in the same way. He still goes to appointments with me. He still checks in about the pregnancy. But there's this clear boundary now that wasn't there before, and I hate it. On top of that, his family got involved. I don't know exactly what he told them, but his sister reached out to me and said I need to stop trying to isolate him from people he's known his entire life. She framed it like I was forcing him to choose sides unnecessarily. That made me feel like I was being painted as the problem. And maybe I am, at least in their eyes. There was also a small pregnancy scare last week. Not anything severe, but enough that I had to go in for an extra check. Everything turned out fine, but for a moment I thought, this is exactly why he shouldn't be gone. I told him that. He said if anything serious happens, he'll leave immediately. But he's still going. That answer didn't comfort me the way I wanted it to. Now I'm stuck in this place where everything feels unstable. I don't know what version of that night people actually know. I don't know if she's lying or telling some partial truth. I don't know how much my boyfriend knew before or what he still isn't saying, and I definitely don't know what happens after the wedding. Because the way he said, "We'll deal with everything after," it didn't sound like reassurance. It sounded like a line being drawn. Right now, I feel like I'd pushed as far as I could, and instead of getting him to choose me, I just made him step back entirely. So now he's going, as best man. And I'm here, waiting, not knowing what's going to be left when he comes back. Follow-up. The wedding already happened. I didn't go, at least not in the way anyone would expect. I told everyone, including him, that I'd stay home, that I didn't want the stress, that I'd keep things calm, focus on myself, the pregnancy or whatever. He didn't argue. That should have been my first sign something had shifted, because before, he would have at least tried to meet me halfway. This time, he just said, "Okay," like it was settled. It didn't feel settled. The morning of the wedding, I woke up earlier than I needed to. I couldn't sit still. I kept thinking about the schedule, what time the ceremony would start, when he'd be standing next to them, when the speeches would happen. I knew all of it because I had asked him days before, pretending it was just casual curiosity. I didn't go to the venue, I didn't walk in or anything like that. But I did go to the hotel where most of the guests were staying. I told myself it was practical. If something happened with me, I'd be closer. If he needed to leave quickly, I wouldn't be far. That's what I kept repeating in my head while I sat in the lobby, pretending to scroll through my phone. People were coming and going, dressed up, laughing, fixing their outfits in the mirrors. I recognized a few faces, mutual friends, people I'd met through him. No one expected me to be there, which gave me this strange sense of control, like I was seeing everything without being seen. At one point, I overheard two girls talking about the rehearsal dinner. One of them said, "I didn't expect it to be that emotional," and the other laughed and said something about history between everyone. I don't even know if they were talking about anything related to me, but my brain latched onto it anyway. I sat there replaying it, trying to figure out if there was some tone I missed. Around the time the ceremony started, I texted him. Nothing dramatic, just, "Are you okay?" He didn't respond. I waited. 10 minutes, 20. I told myself he was busy, obviously, but I sent another one anyway. "Let me know when you can." Still nothing. That's when I started watching everything online. People were posting already little clips, photos outside the venue, and someone panning across the setup. I zoomed in on everything, faces, conversations in the background, trying to read lips at one point, which I know sounds insane, but I couldn't stop. Then I started thinking about his speech. We had argued about it days before. I asked him what he was planning to say, not word for word, but generally. He kept it vague, talked about friendship, growing up together, that kind of thing. I asked if he was going to mention relationships, loyalty, anything like that. He looked at me and said, "I'm not writing my speech around your fears." That stuck. So sitting there, knowing that speech was happening without me knowing what he actually said, it made everything worse. I kept imagining different versions. Him making some indirect comments about mistakes, about trust, about people learning from things. Everyone laughing or nodding, knowing exactly what he meant. I texted him again during that time. "Can you just tell me when your speech is done?" No response. At some point, I stopped pretending I was just waiting around. I started asking myself questions I hadn't let myself think about clearly before. Like, what would I do if he came back and nothing changed? Or worse, if he came back and everything had changed? I kept thinking about a conversation we had before all this blew up. I had asked him, hypothetically, what he would do if someone close to him betrayed me the way she did. He said he wouldn't cut them off completely, but he'd create distance out of respect for me. Now here we are, and he stood next to her at her wedding. So what does that say about where I actually stand? By the time the reception was happening, I was exhausted but couldn't leave. It felt like if I left, I'd miss something. Some moment that would confirm everything one way or the other. He finally texted me back hours later. Just, "I'm okay, busy, talk later." That was it. No explanation, no checking on me, nothing about how things were going. I went home after that. The next day, he came back like nothing had exploded. Not cheerful, not distant either. Just normal. He asked how I was feeling physically, told me he'd pick up groceries, talked about a doctor's appointment we have coming up. He didn't bring up the wedding. I waited for him to. I gave it a day, then two, nothing. So I asked him directly, "You said we'd talk after." He said, "We will. Just not like this." I asked what that meant. He said he wasn't going to have a heavy conversation while everything was still fresh and tense, that he wanted to approach it properly. That word, properly, felt like another way of delaying something he didn't want to say. Since then, it's been this weird in-between. He's still here, still involved, still doing everything he's supposed to do. But whatever that conversation is supposed to be, it hasn't happened, and I hate that I don't know what he's thinking. I've caught myself trying to read into everything. The way he pauses before answering certain questions. The fact that he hasn't mentioned his best friend or the wedding at all. Whether that means something went wrong, or if he's just keeping it separate from me now. I even started thinking about practical things. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly. Looking at what I could afford on my own. What support I'd have if things shifted. I haven't told him any of that. I don't know if I'm preparing or just reacting. What bothers me the most is that I don't feel like I have any control over what happens next. Before, I thought if I pushed hard enough, made my position clear enough, something would give. Now it feels like I pushed, and instead of things bending towards me, they just moved past me. He went. He did everything he said he would. And now he's back, acting like the real conversation is still coming, like I'm supposed to just wait for it. And I am waiting. But I don't know what I'm waiting for anymore. Follow-up. The conversation finally happened. Not the way I expected, not on my timeline, and definitely not with any kind of resolution I could work with. For days after the wedding, he kept things steady on the surface. He showed up to appointments, asked about how I was feeling, and handled practical things. But there was a wall there. Not obvious, not dramatic, just fixed. Like he had already decided something and was waiting for the right moment to say it out loud. I tried to get ahead of it. I asked around about the speech. Not directly at first. I reached out to someone who was there and kept it casual. How was everything? Did he do okay? that kind of thing? The answers were vague. It was nice, he did great, and people laughed. So I pushed a little more. What did he actually say? That's when the tone shifted. The person I was talking to hesitated, then said something like, it was mostly about their friendship and growing up together. Mostly. I asked if he mentioned relationships. They said no, not really. Just something about being there through everything and standing by people even when things get complicated. That phrase stayed with me. Even if it wasn't about me, it felt like it was. I asked someone else, got a slightly different version, same general idea, different wording. That made it worse, not better. It felt like I was trying to piece together something that everyone else had already heard clearly. Then I realized something that hit harder than anything else. He didn't mention me. Not once, from what anyone could tell. No acknowledgement that he's about to have a child. No mention of his own relationship. Nothing tying his life now to what he was standing up there celebrating. It was like I didn't exist in that space at all. After that, I started paying attention to everything he did differently when he got back. How long it took him to answer simple questions. How he'd pause before responding, like he was choosing his words carefully. The way he didn't fill silence the way he used to. It wasn't cold, but it wasn't open either. I asked him a hypothetical one night. If we weren't together, I said, would you still be as close to them? He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, that's not a useful question. That wasn't an answer, but it told me enough. I brought up the conversation again the next day. I told him I didn't want to keep waiting around for whatever he was planning to say, that we needed to actually deal with it. This time, he didn't deflect. He sat down, and I could tell before he even started that this wasn't going to go the way I wanted. He didn't bring up the fiancé first, or the bonfire, or even the wedding. He started with me. He said the last few weeks showed him something he couldn't ignore. That I wasn't just hurt, I was trying to control everything around that hurt. Who he talks to, where he goes, what he says, how things are perceived. I told him that's because no one else was taking it seriously. He said he did take it seriously, but not in the same way I did. Then he said something that I can't really argue with, even if I hate it. He said, what happened to you didn't start with her talking about it. I knew what he meant. I just didn't want to hear it like that. He said he tried to move forward with me after that night, but the way I handled everything since, especially recently, made him feel like I wasn't taking responsibility for my part in any of it. I told him that wasn't fair, that I did take responsibility, that I dealt with the consequences. He said dealing with consequences isn't the same as owning behavior. After that, it shifted from an argument into something else entirely. He said he couldn't keep building a future where every conflict turns into pressure, ultimatums, or attempts to force outcomes, that the pregnancy didn't change that, it made it more important. Then he said he didn't think we should continue the relationship, not a break, not space, end it. I didn't react the way I thought I would. I didn't yell, I didn't cry right there. I just sat there trying to process how we got from an argument about a wedding to this. I asked him what that meant for the baby. He said he would still be involved, that he wasn't walking away from that. That's when something in me actually snapped. Because to me, it felt like he was separating things too cleanly. Like he could just remove me from the equation and still have access to everything else. I told him no. I told him if he's choosing to walk away from me, then he doesn't get to come back in later on his own terms and act like everything is separate. He said that's not how it works. I said it is for me. The conversation ended there. Not with agreement, just with both of us clearly on opposite sides of something that isn't going to bend. I left that night and went to my parents' house. I didn't take everything, just what I needed, enough to not have to go back immediately. Since then, I've had time to think, and my position hasn't changed. If he couldn't prioritize me when it mattered, when I was pregnant, when everything was already unstable, then I don't see why he should get to step in later and be involved like nothing happened. People are going to say that's not fair to the baby. But from where I'm standing, I don't trust him to decide when to show up and when to step back based on what suits him. He made a choice. So did I. I'm staying with my parents now. They know some of what happened, not all of it. Enough to support me without getting into details I don't want to explain. He's reached out a couple of times, not aggressively, just asking to talk, saying we need to figure things out properly. I haven't responded. And I'm not planning to, because at this point, I don't see what there is left to figure out. Analysis. Everyone's stuck arguing about who's right, but that's not actually what this situation exposes. What's more interesting is how control quietly replaced honesty. Look at the pattern. She isn't just reacting to betrayal. She's trying to manage perception after exposure. That's a very specific psychological shift. Once her private mistake became public, her focus stopped being repair the relationship and became contain the narrative. Every escalation tracking conversations, policing his speech, testing loyalty comes from that need to control how she's seen. Meanwhile, the boyfriend didn't explode or retaliate. He did something far more consequential. He stepped out of the emotional tug-of-war entirely. That's why she lost footing. You can't negotiate with someone who stops playing the same game. The breakup wasn't about the wedding. It was about incompatible responses to shame. One person tightened control, the other withdrew structure. And the final move, cutting him off from the child, isn't about punishment as much as it is about reclaiming authority in the only place she still can. That's the uncomfortable takeaway. Unresolved shame doesn't stay internal. It reshapes relationships into power struggles, where being right matters less than who controls the narrative.